We'll start off the panel. We'll all introduce ourselves, and then we'll dive into some questions. My name is Lauren Cole. I run a strategy consulting group called Cole Media, which I've been running since 2002. I've worked with, along with my colleagues, about 150 clients, everything from cable channels, over-the-top services, VR, live events, and a whole range of companies from NBC, PBS, Gracenote, Netflix, Yahoo, Anonymous Content, and lots more. I will turn it over to Peter to introduce himself.
Peter DeWidzik, Vice President of Media and Service Providers at Qello. Qello is a direct-to-consumer play for concert music, as well as we white label, power, and build OTT solutions from end to end, support Acorn TV, recently launched Stadium for Major League Baseball for BAMTech, and a variety of others. We also just merged with an ad company that is taking over about 75% of the broadcast industry in Asia Pac.
There you go. Nice to meet you. Phoenix Gonzalez. I am the co-founder and president of sales at Dot Studio Pro. We are the next generation in online video platforms. We deliver clients to market across devices in under like 6 to 8 weeks. We just launched the Minnesota Vikings across Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire, as well as Lifetime with their new TV show, American Beauty Stars, across web and mobile responsive. I'm getting a little bit of a reverb. Yeah, a little bit of reverb. So I'll pull back a little. Yeah, and at the end of the day, we're here to service clients and help support them get their business models launched online and across devices.
Well, I'm not going to pull back at all. My name is Jeff Stansfield. I'm the president and founder of Advantage Video Systems. We're a systems integration company. We've built over 250 TV stations in our 17 years, a lot of post facilities, production companies. We just rebuilt KTLA Channel 5 Post for all of Tribune and Sinclair and all of their stuff. We do a lot with VR and 360 video as far as post-production and workflows. You know, we also have a studio down in downtown LA where we shoot and create video pitch decks for startup companies, and also we're one of the largest builders right now for video podcasting studios in the market, building stuff for will.i.am and Macy Gray and Ben Shapiro and many other people. So.
Okay, I'm TK Arnold, and I'm the guy with the nose pressed up against the window pane because I'm publisher and editorial director of Home Media Magazine. So we cover the home entertainment industry. We've done that for about almost 40 years, from the days when their home entertainment consisted of rental video cassettes up into the DVD and Blu-ray disc era, and now into the present day where you've got a growing number of platforms and Netflix rules the world.
I'm Nathan McGowan. I'm the Vice President of Product Management for a couple media brands, The Hollywood Reporter here in Los Angeles and Billboard Music in New York. You know, in my role, it's really looking at the intersection of what the user experience is, how we innovate with respect to technology, and definitely how we capture revenue from those things. Video is really central to our strategy. It continues to grow. We haven't quite found OTT to be the place where we're going to maximize growth and revenue, although you know, continue to evaluate that all the time. We've still had a lot of success reaching people through web, and especially on mobile. So looking forward to the discussion.
I'm Paul Canetti, founder and CEO of a company called Maz. We make a variety of products. One is called Phoenix, like Phoenix down there. NewsX and TVX. TVX is a platform that helps publishers, media companies create apps for OTT, for mobile, for web. And the basic premise is that you can create and manage native app experiences without needing any code. And so we work with brands like Hollywood Reporter, Bloomberg, Hearst, Forbes, and hundreds of others. So if you ever see a little powered by Maz when you open an app, that's us.
Got it. So I wanted to start off today, and I'll throw out a topic and let all of our panelists jump in. First question, it seems like everybody and their cousin's going and saying, I need an OTT channel, I need to do an OTT channel. It's, you know, it was, and I think as TK mentioned, it seems like Netflix rules the world maybe with Amazon, yet there are all these companies doing channels. So the first thing I wanted to ask, because there's probably people here in the audience thinking about doing an OTT channel, what does it take to really be able to do one? Is it that you need the right content, you need the right brand? Like who are the right candidates to be doing OTT, or should everybody be doing OTT? Who wants to start?
I can start, as long as I don't get reverb again. So we've been working in the space for about 7 years, launching clients across OTT, and I truly believe that it takes a library of content. So at a minimum, 150 pieces of content at a minimum, with the ability to be able to add more content to your platform on a weekly or bi-weekly basis based on your programming, and the ability to have marketing dollars. And when I mean marketing dollars, I don't mean like $5,000 a month. You need to have, at least for your first 3 months, at least $100,000 with the right marketing company to be able to drive traffic and user engagement. If you don't have those things and you don't have a smart team behind you getting you ready to launch, then you have no business getting into OTT. It's a really crowded space.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing in OTT, and what you hit on it, is a team. You have to have a team, but you also have to have the sales behind it. When I was younger, and I used to pal around with the rock bands and all this stuff, and we used to go to all the whiskeys. People said, well, how do you get signed as a band? Well, you get signed as a band when you can fill the whiskey with people coming to see your stuff. Mm-hmm. If you want to have an OTT platform, you have to have users behind you. You have to have people coming to you and asking for your content. No one's going to invest in a channel that no one watches. You already have to have user base. You have to have, a library is very important, but libraries can be built. But having a user base and having a proper team behind you. We get businesses all the time who come to us and say, we want to start a channel, and the first thing I say is, who's your team? And they say, oh, well, I'm having my friend do my sales, and my friend doesn't know anything about sales. You got to have sales. You got to have people who can go out and sell your product. Because if you don't, you can have the best product in the world, and then it's also knowing how to brand your thing. I see the biggest problem I see with people starting their own channel is they talk about the features of what they're bringing to market, and none of them talk about the value proposition of what they're bringing to market, and that's the most important thing. Understanding the value, understanding how to reach out to new customers, and also being able to reach down the aisle to other channels who have users and say, hey, I have this thing, you have that thing, let's share users, let's create a rev share where I can share some of my users with you and you share some of my users, because if you're just in your own island creating your own users, that's also a recipe for failure too.
I think it's very important to manage expectations too. If you want to be the next Netflix, forget it, it's not going to happen. And what you've got to do, you've got to recognize that content is probably the most important element that you've got. And number two is reaching people, the right people, with that content. You've got to be able to harness analytics. You've got to know how to reach these people. And you also have to realize that perception is very important in this business. We get pitched quite a bit from people who have startups, and they'll send us a press release and photos. And there's the photos of the executives. They're poorly taken iPhone cameras. Send us professional photos. If you want to be in the business, act like you're in the business. Act like you're a success, and you have a good chance of being one.
Yeah, that's the key. I'm going to jump in here. It's really about focusing. OTT is an opportunity to make additional revenue that you might not have had before. It's not just putting a magazine at the end of the rack, 30 years ago at your supermarket. It requires focus, dedication, a content strategy, and then also a strategy of keeping it fresh. Having a dedicated personnel to reach out to curate that content in a much more focused manner. What we're going to see as part of the future of OTT is more niche-related content strategies, these skinny bundles, et cetera, and that's because it lends itself back to the personalization. Now, if you're not constantly relevant to your target audience, then you probably shouldn't get into this business. It's not a dumb pipe, okay? And some people think that if I just throw it up against the wall, something will stick. It has to be a little bit more intelligent than that.
Yeah.
Great. Do you have anything else? So that segues really well into the next thing I was going to ask about is, what are the business models? I mean, I see a lot of them, but where can people really make money in OTT? Do you have to have, is it by subscription? Can you make money on AVOD? Sort of more generally, can you make money in OTT rather? Is this a business yet? What are some of you, Paul? What are your clients seeing?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it matters, of course, on what your business model is as a business in general. So if you're generally free and ad supported and you just try to launch a subscription service out of nowhere, it might not really resonate. And in response to what some of you guys were saying, I mean, yes, OTT is crowded, but we count OTT apps, for instance, today in the thousands as opposed to mobile apps in the millions. So, I mean, there's a lot of upside still to come in OTT. And I do think that probably if you want to be Netflix, I wouldn't say it would never happen because I'm an optimist, but that's hard. But, you know, like, I don't know, when my parents were growing up, there were only 3 or 4 channels on TV. And now there are hundreds or thousands. And so when you think of, you know, those cable networks that broke through against the networks, the networks, I don't know, what do you call networks?
The network of networks.
Yes.
All right, great. The TV stations that Trump hates. No?
He hates them all, so it's okay.
And so I think it's the same thing. Today there's a clear few winners. And it does seem that subscription seems to resonate. And to me, OTT represents sort of a premium product. It's the farthest thing you can get from somebody who's going to click a link on Facebook and stumble onto your property. To get an OTT app takes a ton of effort from an end user. They have to go and switch the input on their television. They have to go into the app store on Apple TV or Roku or Amazon Fire TV or whatever it is. They have to search for your brand unless you're lucky enough to be featured on the front, which again is more likely on OTT than mobile or something. Like, if this person downloads your app, they really, really tried really hard to get there. Right. And so they're sort of pre-qualified as the sort of person that might actually want to pay you or engage on a regular basis. Nobody is accidentally sort of just ending up there. And so we try to really encourage our partners to embrace that knowledge and to give a user experience that is custom tailored to sort of your most hardcore fans. It's almost the opposite strategy of web or social, where the riffraff are just sort of, you know,
But
coming in from everywhere.
At the same time, you do want to have a multivariate approach because each geographical region, and depending on your content strategy, advertising might outweigh subscription. So, or you can have a combination of free and the conversion to premium content. So I think, you know, in choosing the right solution set, it's making sure that your provider, your tech stack can actually accommodate all those variances, because you as the content owner want to play with that dial. Not only being relevant with, you know, current content based upon what's going on in the marketplace, but also, you know, changing the dial and being experimental in your approach.
Just to add on to that, the ad rates we're seeing on OTT right now are just astronomical.
That's right.
30%
So
growth
define astronomical.
I mean, direct sold, we're seeing $30, $40 CPMs.
Yep.
And the crazy thing is that the session times are also astronomical. So you're lucky if someone watches a 2-minute video on mobile. We're seeing, you know, people sitting down for 30, 40 minutes, an hour on OTT because they're literally just turning on the TV.
Yep.
I mean, think about when you sit in front of the TV, you're going to sit there for at least a half hour. And so you're seeing a lot more ads, and each ad is worth a lot more. So even a much smaller volume of users could actually be worth the same or more than mobile or web based on those two factors.
And
100%.
OTT ad spend is like 4% of the TV ad spend. So when people start turning off their cord cutting, that eyeball goes to the digital space. That means the world and the growth trajectory of ad-sponsored, you know, OTT solutions are definitely in the right trajectory.
And in leading to that, I think you also need to concentrate. What a lot of people miss in that is they miss metadata, how to collect metadata, how to analyze metadata, because all this ad revenue, all this ad revenue, where you know, how you're going to get, who you're going to get to advertise on your product, and what you're going to do. You need to connect with your subscriber, whether you know, however your business model is. You need to connect with them properly, and being able to understand what their needs are. And there's a lot of ways of collecting metadata from the users. You know, the big screen that we used to call a TV is just another screen, and you have your smaller screen, and you have your mid-sized screens, and all this stuff, and they're all connected. And learning ways to connect those screens together, and to keep the user engaged. So the user leaves the big screen and goes onto their iPad, and then goes from their iPad to their iPhone. Create an engagement that tracks all that and collects metadata from that, and allows you to give the end user the ads that they want. Because if you give your user ads that they're interested in, it's going to push off. If you create relevant content that they want to see and engage and understand what content you're giving and look at it every day and say, this did not work and I'm going to change that and give the so metadata is, to me, the most important, one of the most important things you can look at.
I'm just going to speak to that. So this goes back to the fundamental core, knowing your business model and having a team behind you. If you're going to deliver an ad serving model, you need to make sure that you have somebody on your team who understands ad ops. Because when we talk about metadata, right now, 90% of ad serving platforms do not take all of the custom parameters that you need to send back to the advertisers in order for you to be able to actually monetize your eyeballs in the proper way. Right now, those companies are still working to update their SDKs in order for them to be able to collect all the custom parameters against the metadata that you're delivering, so that you can actually get the relevant advertising and make the true CPMs and start to see the actual fill rates on your content.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Like, what kind of information is it that they're not getting, that so when people are looking at ad ops?
Well, when it like I just launched a client who came to us and said, look, there's a lot of custom parameters we need to be able to collect back, and that we need to be able to get from the ad partners, which the ad partners aren't able to get because of their reporting. So, for example, all of the different platforms that are going to deliver you into your OTT applications, like mine, which is an online video platform, we have channel IDs, we have player, we have video IDs, we have all of these additional parameters which need to be sent back in order to segment the content, so that you can actually get the relevant analytics against each piece of content, so that you can actually start to truly monetize it. And those things right now, most of these ad exchange platforms and ad partners don't understand that, and are still trying to catch up to understanding that all of these additional layers of data need to be sent through custom parameters.
And to Jeff and Phoenix's point, we're taking, at least Quello perspective, I'm going to be selfish here, is taking a bit of a personalized approach to curating the right layers of metadata up front in our content processing. So the kind of thing where we're collecting images, facial recognition, scenes, objects, taking the contextual and the audio and processing that into deep metadata, so then we can take the ad tech and match the ad tech with the relevant requests of the end user. If I'm looking for cats, that I get cat videos relevant, because it also becomes a recommendation engine, and the people stay on the platform a lot longer.
I'm always looking for cats.
Always cats.
I get you.
When I'm on OTT, it's just like, cats.
Lots of cats.
I've moved
I
on.
want to buy some cats.
I've moved on to
Laser
Russian
cats,
dash cams.
actually.
So here's a business model question. Are there certain types of content, or who should be doing subscription or advertising? Is it different types of content? Should people not be doing subscription unless they're a big brand, or should they not be doing advertising because there's not enough money in it?
I don't think there's ever not enough money to do advertising. If you have you need to look at what content you're providing and who you're providing. If you provide relevant content to people and then give them the advertising that they want, there's not a channel that can't exist with that advertising is not good for. Advertising is good for everybody. You just got to make sure it's the right ads, and it's the right, and you're giving the right relevant content to the people. So, free subscriptions are fine, but I actually don't like free subscriptions. And because what they do is they lead to people demanding it free. MSNBC used to give all of their content away for free. Hulu used to give all of their content away for free. When they switched to a subscription model for that, there was a huge kickback, a huge of users that dropped off of them, and they lost a lot of people. They got that back, but it's an education. They had to, and you need to educate your people. You need to tell them, I'm giving you value. So it costs money to do that. This is how it's paid for, by this ad, and make the ads attractive, make the ads part of what you want to do. Most of the channels that we work with, we tell them to wrap the advertising in as part of the program, you know, and talk about and make it actually part of something that people want to watch, people want to be engaged in, and it makes the ads more sellable and makes them more relevant to people.
Well, I have a question, Nathan, because I know you were saying you were kind of starting to get into OTT. Like, what are the business decisions? Would you need to be able to make money in OTT? Is it you need a certain number of users? I mean, how do companies go about deciding I need my own OTT channel?
Yeah, I mean, I like to start by just thinking about do you really believe you have value to offer an audience, you know, and the user, we know we do in the web space. I think without sort of speculating too much on what kind of business we would create in OTT, I think it's fair to say that there's this user experience where someone is likely to manage 1 or 2 or maybe 3 paid subscriptions, and they probably don't want to manage that many more. And so I think that supplemental free content experience that is ad supported is going to be really viable and attractive, and I think ultimately that's probably where we'll end up, and then I think this starts looking like what TV always did in some ways, where maybe you had what felt like free TV, but you subscribed to HBO and a few other things. I mean, there's that combination. Just as far as why we haven't been there yet, coming back to like the question of do we have value to offer the audience? I think in the space right now, the value of content is so strong. I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible what people have access to. There's hundreds and hundreds of original content series. So we've been patient about that. I think the business is going to, I think, come into play once what we can do there looks a lot more like what we can do on web. And in web, our business model is derived from getting billions of video views because we reach something like 40 million US visitors on a monthly basis. So that's a really good video business, but it would start much smaller than that in OTT. So there's no race for us to go there right now.
Do you guys look at it as an add-on to an existing business, or is it, just generally, how do you, as everybody see it, is it you're already doing all these other platforms, so you add OTT, or does it have to stand on its own?
I think it would be a space for growth for us because realistically, we probably captured most of the social growth that's going to be available to our brands. We've grown a lot in search, but that's probably got a ceiling too. And again, that's all web. So I would just view that as an opportunity to expose ourselves to a new audience in a new way. But again, we have to offer something that's really valuable.
Yeah. To speak to the whole idea of SVOD versus AVOD, which was your original question. I've been doing this for 7 years. We've been launching clients on OTT for about 3.5 years now. Every client who comes to me with the idea that they want to launch an SVOD service, and I always tell them that they're wrong. You don't have any business launching an SVOD service unless you already have a paying audience through a website or a newsletter subscription or something where you already have an audience who is willing to pay you. Otherwise, you're shooting yourself in the foot. I know so many SVOD platforms that have launched and after 2-3 years have 500 paying clients and have had over 100,000 downloads or installs of their application, but have never been able to grow past that. Why? Because the user didn't know who they were. There's so much niche communities out there that want access to content. Give it to them, but don't just give it to them, and I agree with you, in the sense of just, I'm giving it away for free, so you're going to expect it for free. You want to build in incentive. Every client who comes to us, I always say to them, let's start with a free ad-supported model with an opt-in registration, and on that opt-in registration, let's look at what the additional features are that we can give them, and that's the carrot for getting them in there. Once you have that audience engaged, and then you get them to convert to that opt-in free registration, then now you can truly start to look at your data and what devices are accessing it on, what content they're engaging with, and when does it make sense for us to then start introducing a maybe 50% pay or 10% pay. Maybe you start out with just transactional and see if people are even willing to pay for your content before you move to SVOD. The data is your friend. You need to be able to look at the data and you need to have an iterative approach. It's not throwing it all up against the wall at once.
I totally agree with that. I think
Good.
you can't, the one size fits all model is just, in general in digital, it just doesn't work, you know? So you want to sort of bring these people through. If someone downloads your app, again, they went through all that trouble, give them something to do. So if I'm not ready to pay, cool, then just watch some free videos. And if I'm not ready to register, cool, don't register. Now I am. Like, you just want, the number one thing we try to prevent is just someone immediately deleting the app. They went through all the trouble to download the app. You probably paid some money to get them to do that somehow. And then they're like, oh, subscription, and then they just delete it. It's like, well, you definitely don't want that. But I actually had a question for you two, because coming from the magazine industry, I sort of feel like you guys are the exception. You're masters of the subscription world in small volumes compared to 40 million, uniques on your site. And so it almost seems like a magazine brand has like the perfect storm, the perfect way to transition into almost like a video magazine service or a value add or an upsell to your magazine subscribers. Like, to Phoenix's point, you actually do have people that pay for your magazine already. So how do you sort of like transition that into a video world?
I think for example, we're a small magazine, but our website that's the mothership, and you've got a great model where people go to your website, you drive it through daily email, news blasts, newsletters, breaking news alerts, things like that. So it's almost like, we're not at the point where we would want to mess with a good thing right now. There's no point in, like for us, a small property going OTT when we've got a website that's very dynamic and that's very, very popular.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because some of consumer expectations have a lot to do with precedent. So magazines a long time ago set a precedent of what a magazine, and in our case, I think a high value, very glossy magazine, what that costs. And I think people who subscribe to it sort of unconsciously pay that cost. Some of the issues with subscriptions in digital media is that cost has been driven so low and the value in return is so high that I think it creates problems for people who don't spend hundreds of millions or billions of dollars on content. So I think you're right that there's a way to create some overlapping value around that. But I think, again, what people pay for different things, $5 for coffee, but original content on Netflix should be $9 or $10. It's just you've got to make sure that consumers agree to that price.
And so sort of shifting off of business models for a sec, let's get to the sort of how do I go about launching it? And I know there's several of you that have platforms, but so I have a bunch of content. Let's just say I have some kind of a library. How do I pick what kind of what kinds of questions do I ask? And I know several of you can talk about it both from the perspective of, well, we've got somebody, Jeff, who helps clients. We've got 3 people who run platforms. We've got what are you guys seeing?
I can start that conversation off. I always tell clients when they come to me, because everybody always comes with the big vision, which is awesome because you have a roadmap of where you want to end up. But should you be on every platform to start? No. Roku is has number one market share in the country. Why are you going to want to be on Apple TV when Apple TV of the 4 major platforms, has the smallest market share? Also, Roku has a free direct publisher, so you can start out using an OVP platform where you can build your content library, ingest it, get it ready, and deliver it to a direct publisher feed to start. Get your feet wet, test your model, make sure you can deliver ads, get your market share in Roku, work on your discoverability, and then from there, okay, am I ready to get into Amazon Fire TV, or am I ready to get into Apple TV? That's for me. I of course, every platform wants you to take every product they have. We want to make money, but at the end of the day, I don't want to make money with you in that way. I want to make sure that you actually are getting your it's baby steps. Everything in life. We grew up from a baby to adult. Everything has been baby steps. Your business should be baby steps. So launching on all the platforms, unless you have, again, a massive team behind you and a lot of money, makes no sense.
And I guess maybe I was thinking about it differently. I was also thinking, how do you pick, maybe is it the right word, technology vendor, or how do I pick
Dot versus Quello versus,
Oh, okay.
So
You want to talk about that?
But this one's good because you're doing
Hey, we got a box. No, I think, from my experience, I've been doing this 17 years now, and formerly I was running US for Kaltura, and we had everything from the telco grade through the end versus where we're at now as a direct-to-consumer play. I can tell you one of the things that I've learned to be consistent on is to have a platform that has visibility and control over multiple monetization efforts across your ecosystem around your content. There is hundreds of OTT providers out there, and unfortunately the buyer gets confused, and where's the differentiation? Like for us, having a marketing module built into it, I mean, everyone needs marketing as part of their business. Why isn't anyone else doing this? You know, things like that. Or why are you having a third party handle your subscription so they actually own the data of your subscriber? Your app is built somewhere else, and then you use Brightcove or Yalla or someone else in the middle. And what happens is you lose data set and control when you start adding too many layers of third party technologies. Where you should be adding that extra layer. And again, it could be on the app side. I believe that there's some really good app providers out there, but is the recommendation engine and things like that that can improve the performance of your core platform. But having control of that is key, and having an end-to-end solution that is flexible to meet those changing needs. Again, you having to be experimental in your approach in your market, where AVOD might work in Latin America and SVOD might work in the US, right, et cetera. You have to have that. Some platforms don't. They're very flat. Sometimes their ad monetization doesn't work. And that's going to affect your business, especially as you go to market and you fail. You get one chance here, right?
So do I need a platform that does everything, or is it, no, there are, you know,
There's
there's
not a-
two or three things that are your
not
at a
anybody that
minimum?
does everything.
Yeah. So-
But,
It's not exactly true.
well,
Thank you.
Not to cut you off,
Yeah.
please.
So,
no,
Oh. So you can output to every single platform or whatever, all the major ones, using our platform. Not to say that everyone should. I like the baby steps approach generally. What we aim to do, though, is what we try to advise our partners is we want to avoid is false negatives. So yes, Roku is the #1 platform on average, but does it mean it will be the runaway for you? And so may or may not align with the averages. And so what we try to do is sort of lower the barrier to entry enough from a production standpoint, cost standpoint, everything, so that you really can go out on every platform from the beginning if you want to. It's as simple as a checkbox. Like once you've created the app, quote unquote, in a generic sense, here's my content, this is what I want it to be called, this is the advertising integration, this is the UI, I've created whatever, the branding. Then you just check a box. Say, I want it to go to Roku, I want it to go to Apple TV, I want it to go to Android, I want it to go to web, I want it to go to iOS, whatever. And then you look at the data and you really see, okay, well, where is the traction happening for my brand personally, instead of looking at sort of an industry pie chart and assuming that you're going to align there. And we think about this concept of false negatives a lot. The other thing that a lot of companies do is they roll out a very basic product where the user experience is sort of pale in comparison to, let's say, a Netflix, or, you know, because the expectation is aligned with whatever the best app is, you know? It's the same thing like when someone launches an e-com site and they're like, oh, like our numbers are bad. And it's like, well, that's probably because every one of your customers has already used Amazon and your site sucks compared to Amazon. So, not everyone can have Amazon, but you can get pretty close. And so I think this idea of rolling out with some generic app with a gray background, a grid of videos, and then you say, ugh, but nobody ended up using our app, it's like, well, you didn't really give yourself a fair shot. And so we really try to avoid the false negative. You need to go into the market with something that looks great, works great, is fast, is stable, and if possible, is actually on every platform. And then give yourself actually like a fair chance of seeing what works.
yeah, I always tell my clients don't rush into deliverable, because you need to have go out and do a proper business plan, go out and do proper research, find the markets that fits what you want to do, and do some experimental, and really get out there and understand what you're delivering, because like you said, you have one shot to get out there, and if you don't deliver on that one shot, you're just going to end up losing total market share, and you lose all that work that you've done to build up all that user base. People abandon really, really, really quickly, and it's very hard to get that back. the one thing that I tell all my clients is to build alliances. If rather than looking for the right app, look for the right partnerships to develop. I have a client that does horror, that has a horror channel that collects all the horror movies from way back. Everything from Abbott and Costello to Creatures of the Black Lagoon to so on and so forth. And I tell them, well, find an app that those people would also find relevant and partner with that app, find out where they are. One of the best platforms that I like, Cisco has a great platform that's easy to get into, very, very easy. They have all the tools built for you. You can go and create that, and then you can migrate on to other people that offer you other things that you can build onto. Because you can always go further. You can always go out to other things. But if you fumble at the beginning, if you fumble the ball at the beginning, the recovery is really hard.
So I'm still sort of missing though. I want to get an OTT channel, as Peter, you said, there's dozens of companies at least out there doing it. Hundreds.
Yes.
What are the key elements? Is it I want one with a good recommendation system? I want one that does everything?
There is no one.
There's not one that does everything, and I think the original question was misconstrued between platform
Yes.
approach
Which
on
is
marketability
totally fine.
versus
Yeah.
who you might select as a back end to fulfill that controlling aspect.
Right.
So what is the
which-
right word? Is it a back-end service provider?
Yeah, it's like,
A
your
service
content management, your processing, there's a lot of things like the metadata processing and the data set that comes in from understanding what your user analytics are so you can properly market to them. That's handled on the back end, and choosing the right provider that is more holistic. Again, the first go to market around these solution sets, at least starting from the OVP market, were very fragmented, where they had multiple people, like a subscription management over here, a video processing engine over there, and an app provider here. And still, at the end of the day, you have nothing but a dumb pipe, right? It's not going to do your business any value, versus having the visibility and the control to do that testing. I think is what we're trying to go
exactly.
Yep.
before.
Got it.
So, again, what I would recommend, and again, there's everything from the lowest to the low, and I'm not going to throw people under the bus. I will. Okay. The Vimeo VHXs, the Zipes of the world down here, and then, Cisco, Quello, wherever in the middle, and then, Siemens just shut down their entire operation. They were doing 28 million, and they were selling a lot to the MVP market. So it's, I think, like anything, if I want to put a fence in my backyard, I'm going to get 3 bids. And just focus in on your business, what you need, where you're trying to get out of it, and pick a good vendor that could accommodate at obviously a very aggressive price point. Don't go with the relationship and just listen to a sales guy, because they misrepresent a lot of stuff.
So as somebody who would be a customer, I mean, the absolute most important questions for me would be really specific client success stories.
Yep.
Hopefully with a really strong frame of reference that looks a lot like what you do. And I've had experiences that have been really strong in that regard. Not just all kinds of products, and that makes the decision and your own business plan a lot easier to move forward on. And when you don't have that conversation, and the closest you get to it is a slide with 20 brand logos, but no clear picture of what they did for any of those
Exactly.
brands.
Get a demo of the product,
Yeah.
for one.
A
Like, there's a
live
lot of people that
demo.
sell off of the deck, and the deck misrepresents the totality of what they can provide.
Yeah.
And that
Talk
often
to
happens.
others who've done
There's
it.
one other thing I think is really important, and having been on both sides of the table, being a client and also now owning a platform and delivering to clients, finding a true technology partner, somebody who is going to iterate with you. There's somebody who is going to they're not just delivering picks and shovels to you, they're actually looking at wanting to work with you, understand how to iterate with you, understand how to explain data to you, help you understand your monetization. Those are the things that you want a true technology partner, not just somebody who's going to give you picks and shovels.
I agree with that 100%, as long as it's me.
Yeah, do you know of anybody?
That's me.
Yeah. And I also want
of us here.
I also want to mention that the importance of research. One thing that I've noticed, OTT happens so quickly and so fast that some of our basic due diligence has kind of gone out the door.
Oh, yeah.
You know, spend time, research. I mean, we have never had access to more information than we do now. Google things, read things, look at other apps and look at channels that work and figure out why they work.
Yep.
Right.
And don't just rely on your own opinion. Ask your friends, ask your kids.
And also
Don't
get-
shop now for something you're going to make a decision for 2 years from now. Guaranteed that 90% of it is all changed,
Yeah.
right?
And get referrals.
Yeah.
Like when, if you want to choose a technology provider, find out, hey, give me, look at the settings, give me 3 to 6 people, channels that you've worked with, and then call those people and drill them down to say, research what kind of questions to ask them, find out what they did right, what they did wrong, how the support was, and how they helped build your questions and how they helped build your metadata back then, because that's the problem that I see. A lot of people get into there, and like you said, they leave a lot of empty lines in that metadata pipe. And if you don't have that metadata, then you're not going to know what your customers want, what they're doing, where they're going, and you're going to lose everybody. So
I've seen clients in big companies lately just starting to say, I'm not going to go through all the headache of doing my own OTT. I'll just do a partnership with Amazon and be an Amazon channel. And I'm curious what you guys think of that. I mean, is that a good idea for people, a bad idea? Is it, why would, I guess for the audience too, why would somebody say, I'm just going to do an Amazon channel and not do my own OTT?
bad idea.
Well, I think it's the consignment model. There you consign your content to YouTube, you consign your content to Facebook, you consign your content to everyone. It's syndication. I think it's part of the business model, but if you understand the sales cycle or the actual sales funnel, you need to have all those layers of additional revenue coming in, but at the end of the day, you need to know and own your audience. All those other places are going to own the audience there and share revenue with you. They're great syndication models. That is the consignment model. But below that funnel is your actual O&O strategy where you control your audience. And that's a segment of revenue that you shouldn't leave on the table.
Right.
Yeah, also, if you go to Amazon, you go to YouTube, you go to Facebook, they own your content. When you put something on there, they own your content. You can go out to Playa del Rey here and record at the YouTube facility. They own everything that you've done there. They also decide what ads to pump into onto your thing. I had a channel that was one of the largest gay, lesbian, and transgender sites, and a Republican anti-gay company paid a lot of money to YouTube to put that on top of their channel, and they lost 30% of their audience because of that. They put anti-gay legislation right over the gay channel, and they lost 30% of their viewers overnight. So you've got it. When you do these, you can. What I tell my clients with Amazon and YouTube and Facebook is utilize them to help you. Don't utilize them to help YouTube. YouTube's rich enough.
Snack them like little hors d'oeuvres, but
Yeah.
do not give them the whole meal.
My wife works at YouTube, so you shouldn't completely starve them for my sake. But to me, the whole way the question is framed, I mean, not you're quoting some other random question, is wrong. It's not an either or. Like you should be everywhere.
Both.
Absolutely. And
And syndication
And-
should be part of your business strategy.
And by the way, it'll only become more fragmented with time
Right.
and not less. It's additive. And so, yeah, it used to be awesome when, digital meant your O&O website and then you're done, and maybe you had a keyword page on AOL and that was it, but that's not how it is today, and it probably won't be ever again. And so if you just place all your eggs in one basket, even a good basket like Amazon, you're basically shooting yourself in the foot compared to all your competitors. And so you just have to swallow that pill nice and early and say, this is going to be hard, and I'm going to need to be everywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Some people see that being a lower risk just to embark on that strategy, right? I don't have to, but they're also not embracing, as Phoenix said, the intimacy and the relationship that you have between content and consumer. And that is your audience. Like a restaurant, you want to know who you're feeding and what you're feeding to them. And if you don't have that control and you're giving it up because you're somebody else that is just, servicing, food to a diner or whatever behind the scenes, you don't have that. You have no control. But it, again, should be something that you should be adding to your strategy. Just as Pluto TV and TV4 and, go down the list of Twitter and, Go 90, have a holistic strategy. If you have enough content, you can bifurcate where that goes and optimize those strategic licensing relationships to the point where you actually have a really good business.
Is there anybody other than Amazon? Like, I've heard of success stories, like Acorn, I know Jeffrey mentioned, is a good example where they went, when Amazon channels came in, they suddenly went from wherever they were, 100,000, now I'm hearing like 300,000. Are there other groups that aren't doing it today, but maybe are up and coming that you see will be good places that will also be driving subscriptions like Amazon is?
I just want to clarify the data. We built.
You guys did.
Right.
I get the
Acorn
Acorn
TV. We took them from 200,000 subscribers to
Sorry,
over
got my count
530,000 subscribers. So, yeah, it's a
So
good
it's
business
not all
based upon
Amazon?
content. No, but
Okay.
that's a good.
Yeah.
Again, that's a good part of their strategy on all those devices. So the question is there any other locations that would be also part? So what I'm seeing is, and I've had the opportunity to be the OTT solution of one of the largest content repositories, you're probably aware of, Vubiquity, and I spend quite a bit of time there. And as we open up the door to a variety of where they would fall in the stack, where do these customers, some customers come in like Lantern and Asylum, and with horror content, they would be, I just want to syndicate it, I want to hand it to TV4 and Pluto TV, et cetera. And other people care about building their own image, their own brand, and control it. So it's, again, there's a lot of providers that are aggregating content based upon rev share deals and creating a mini Comcast, a mini network, and then they're reaching into that network and being selective about how they repurpose to other means. So to answer that question, just, there's many more doors that are being opened up right now, like Go90, from a syndication model perspective, and you should take advantage of it as long as those deals make sense and they don't contradict some of your other strategies you have, like building your own brand. Right?
Right. Exactly.
Anybody else? Let's talk about an area that we haven't touched on yet, or touched on very briefly, but I know is really, really important, and that's discovery. How do people find it? What's going on today? And sort of, is it about the metadata, is it about the marketing, like what's happening there, and how does anybody find all this content?
From my perspective, we still have too many silos. Nobody wants anybody else. Netflix doesn't want to let Amazon in. Amazon doesn't want to let Netflix in. I'm at the point when I want to find out something to watch, I go to Google.
So I'm going to go back to the point that I made before, which is creating alliances with other channels, because that's how smart. And also I do rewards. I have lots of channels, and what we do is we say, hey, if you give me this many users, I'll pay for a trip to you to Hawaii. Or I'll do something, or really reward people for bringing you users, and then also going to other channels and creating alliance with them. Say, hey, let's create a relationship. I'll put something on my channel, you put something on your channel, and we share users, and we create this alliance. That's how you get users. You can also go out and market. There are apps that
Market your app.
What?
That market your app.
Well, the market, like there's one called Bixel, which is like a rewards thing. People have this app and they go around and and whatever they do, and they go around town and they buy things and they get rewards, and then that builds an analytics of what they want, and then they can take that metadata and say, oh, this person likes shopping at this, and this person has this kind of viewer profile, so they would like this kind of, they would like this kind of app. So, you start marketing and start understanding where your users are. Those track users, and when the users use that app, go all around town. They know when that user leaves the screen and goes to bed. They know when that user goes down to the Target store down the block. They know when what that user buys, because that user logs everything they're buying. And so it knows everything that you do.
It's a game of big data. I mean,
It's a game of big data. You need to track data, analyze data, and then create alliances. And that's how you do it.
I have a much simpler approach, which is you should have a good marketer.
Yep.
Absolutely. A team.
Like consumer marketing applies to app or OTT related products just like anything else. If you were launching anything in the world, a new restaurant, you would invest in marketing. Apps are no different. All the time, people assume that if you just put something in the App Store, it will become Candy Crush or something, because that happened one time, you know. The story I love to tell is actually Angry Birds was the 42nd game that Rovio, the studio behind Angry Birds, created. So that means there are 41 other games that they had already put on the App Store that you and I have never heard of. 41 before that. And these are obviously really, it takes a long time to develop 41 games and then a 42nd. So I mean, these are experts, right?
Yep.
They're not like, there's this myth that like anybody can do anything and magically everyone uses it, and it's just not true. Or, you know, those are the ones you read about, so I guess it's true every once in a while. But let's assume it's not going to be true for you. And so I always say for every dollar you put in the production or the technology, you should be putting in marketing, 1 for 1. If possible, put a lot more in marketing.
That's right.
Than anywhere else. And if you're just launching it and sort of hoping for the best, if your purpose is to experiment, fine. If your purpose is actually to have commercial success, you have to do it. And I actually think it plays nicely into the last question with the aggregators and social and all that. I mean, that's your top of the funnel. That's where you're going to have the most volume in any case. And so marketing isn't only about bringing new people into the funnel, that's part of it, but then it's about having a really smart strategy about bringing those people sort of all the way down. And again, I think OTT is basically the last stop on the train. Maybe the very last stop is like a conference or event where you actually have to get somebody to put on their pants and get off the couch. But otherwise, like OTT is the bottom of the funnel. So you have to bring people there all the way from the top.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean,
It's really great.
we talk a lot about Netflix, and they take nothing for granted. You look at their spend on marketing; it's incredible. And I don't know what the multiple is to the tech side, but probably pretty close to what you were describing. It's more than $1 billion. So
Oh, God, yeah.
At least.
And
Yeah.
back to your conversation, Jeff, earlier about, what is it, T-Mobile includes Netflix now, subscribe to, right? It's brokering the right strategies to be inclusive because other partners might be taking that marketing spend off of you as
Right.
part of their own
I
strategy.
think that helps T-Mobile more than it helps Netflix
Right,
at this point.
right.
Is there any like rule of thumb of what people are spending today to market either to gain really subscriber acquisition cost, any amount that's sort of a rule of thumb of how much, if I have X to spend on marketing, how many subscribers I might be able to get or how many free downloads or?
Well, I mean, I can just talk from client experience. And from experience of hearing other companies like come and talk to us about user acquisition, I personally think if you're spending 50 cents to $1 for user acquisition, you're doing good. If you're spending more than that, I would say to rethink it, just because I've seen from experience, my clients are spending under $1 for user acquisition.
A lot of the budgets that I've seen put in place are like $15 subscription, subscriber acquisition cost.
And is that for
which
paid?
means that you're not gonna, you have to understand, like any business, you're gonna be at a loss for the start of it until you can start to generate enough revenue and momentum, down the line. And if you can't weather that storm, again, back to the should we do this or not, don't do it.
And so 15 is sort of the range that you're saying for a paid
Again,
subscription?
For paid.
For
And
paid,
AVOD, for
yeah.
AVOD, I'm
Right.
seeing on an opt-in registration model, my clients are spending 60 cents to $1 per user acquisition, and we're talking about 250,000 installs in less than 4 months with 160,000 registered
I
users.
think the data suggests that advertising OTT is definitely a wave of the future that equals more revenue because of where the marketing spend is going, where the eyeball is shifting, and breaking down the burden of subscribing and actually getting fed something, right? So I don't know if anyone agrees to that, but that would be kind of
I don't
my
think
bet.
I don't think $15 sounds bad for a subscriber, assuming your subscription price is high
Right.
enough. If you're
Right.
charging $10 a month, even $5 a month, so
This-
you break even in 5 months and you go. Now, of course, that needs to be the average, right? So, let's say you're converting 100 people in general, and one of them subscribes.
Yeah.
If you're spending $15 on that subscriber, it's actually 15 over 100 people.
Right.
So the
Yeah.
rates are even lower than the 50
Right.
cents you're talking about. So, you can sort of, the math isn't that hard to think about from
Well,
a profitability standpoint. But the other thing to say is I would highly recommend not marketing it as an OTT subscription. That's not like a
Agreed.
thing. I mean, forget the word OTT. Obviously,
Yeah,
no one
get
knows
rid of
OTT.
it.
You're a network.
Get rid of it.
But I don't even mean TV. I think the consumer expectation is just a subscription. I can get it anywhere, right? So I can watch it on my phone, I can watch it on my computer, I can watch it on my TV. Soon I can watch it in VR, I can watch it, whatever, in a hologram
Right.
deck. And so it's about creating value for the brand more than for the product. Like I subscribe to Netflix. I don't subscribe to Netflix on Apple TV.
Yeah, I think what you spend on marketing and all that goes back to basics. When I was in high school and college, I studied Keynesian economics, and it's that model is still relevant today. You spend higher amounts now, and over time you spend lesser money and you
Right.
gain users.
Very true.
It's all about a snowball. If
Yeah.
you have on the top of a hill and you start with a snowball and you roll a snowball down, you're going to gain Billy watches it, and Billy's going to have Tommy and Jane watch it, and Jane's going to get 10 users, and Billy's going to get 10, and then the snowball's going to get bigger and bigger, and with lesser and lesser effort, and you're going to do so. When you start out, yes, you're going to invest more
Yeah.
money when you start gaining that ability and gaining those users and gaining that trust. People have to develop a know, trust, and like attitude to what you have. And once you develop that know, like, and trust attitude, you'll spend less money and you'll gain more users.
Yeah, one last thing to just say on that. So talking about the snowball effect, media buying, that's where you want to start to gain traction. Media buying, where people are where you're actually being discovered within Hulu and other platforms when users are watching content. If you're going after the cable cutting audience, you want to be spending money on media buying to start, because that's where people are going to discover you, because they've already cable cut and they're inside of applications watching and getting ads that are going to prompt them to install your application right then and there. And that's where you want to start. And then from there, you can start looking at getting more niche with your marketing in terms of, like marketing back to them, newsletters, things of that nature. But to kind of get the snowball going, media buying is the first place you should be looking at. From my experience,
I
anyway.
think it's smart.
Yeah. What kind of churn are people seeing now? I'm just curious if anybody knows. So I would do my budget and I need my $15 for a subscription service, or 50 cents to $1 for just to get a free download. And then how much churn should I assume I'm going to have every month?
Is your content good?
I hope so.
Yeah, but I think that's it,
Yeah,
though.
let's just say it's premium content. I have the right amount of content. I've got a fan base. I've got, I think I've done everything right. I've spent my $15. I got, 25,000 people signing up the first month. I'm making up numbers here. What
Preventing
kind of
churn is a business within itself,
Yeah.
and being able to market to those people right
Right
away
away.
while they're churning, which goes back to the data set and the user, et cetera. Having that is key. The numbers itself, there's not one answer back to Paul, what he said. I mean, it's content, it's being relative, it's actively marketing them. So, it could be anywhere from X to X, and that number could be exponential. I mean,
It's going to depend on your programming strategy. And content first, programming strategy second. If the users are engaged with your programming strategy and enjoying it, and you're giving them really great, fun ways to engage with the content,
In your financial modeling, you should put in a churn, part of your business, and you should put in marketing and subscriber acquisition costs and things like that. And a lot of people don't, and that's why they fail in this, because they just think, again, spaghetti on a fridge, how much is going to stick?
we talked a little bit when we did this panel 6 months ago about that it was coming soon, that you'd be able to get personalized channels, that they would know so much about you, and you would just have channels and content that's your own personal recommendations. Where are we in this process? I mean, how close are we to getting your own personal channels? What's going on in the whole recommendation space? And I guess it goes along with the metadata question.
There's a lot of really great recommendation companies out there, and there's one sitting in the audience
Right
right
for us.
now. I think they're probably one of the leaders.
And which
in-
one is that one? Just
That's
so-
content-wise.
Content,
Karen sitting over there. They are, the ability to be able to, through machine learning, work with companies that are going to connect into your existing OTT applications and provide you with the ability to really harness your data set back to the end user to retarget them in ways that are going to engage them with relevant content is really what is going to be important in terms of churn. And companies like that are doing it really well. There's lots of recommendation companies out there that have their own mix in terms of how they're going to engage the audience beyond the first touch or the first piece of content they have. And that is an important part of your strategy for whether it's web or OTT. If you're delivering video, you've got to think about how you're going to continue to deliver recommendations. And through that, it becomes a personalized experience with the end user. Some platforms are better at doing it than others, but at the end of the day, that's kind of the general sense.
Absolutely.
I would, oh, go ahead, Nathan.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, first of all, personalization is very, very difficult. People spend a lot of money, and really smart people, apply solutions to it. And I think everybody kind of understands that their expectations of what they're going to get recommended are constantly defied. It's still being worked on. I also think advertising is an important part of that conversation too. So I think, or I wonder if it might actually be easier to solve for the personalization of the type of ads you get more so than the content, because so many of your content decisions are kind of unconscious, but I think you have more explicit consumer interests in certain products or services that are being sold. And I think most surveys show that a really high degree of people, it's something like over 70%, say advertising is totally irrelevant to them that's served in these pre-roll type situations, if that's what we're talking about. So I think that's a really key space to look at too.
So you think, are the ads serving, is it getting any closer to getting, do they know enough about me they're going to serve the right ad, or is that a space that's still being worked on?
I mean, it's definitely being worked on. For a publisher like us, some of what we've turned to for advertising revenue is, things in that more programmatic space. So that creates a new challenge because you've opened yourself up to a pool of interested advertisers, and you don't always know who they are, and you can sort of whitelist them and try to get it to something that you feel better about, though not as great as your direct campaigns, people you have the relationships with. But people are definitely working on it. It's just, again, it's hard, but I think maybe the logic you have to use to serve relevant advertising might be a little easier than content.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, that's yet to, it's a new ground,
New ground.
but
Well, can I just say
Yeah.
something here? Because
gonna
I came from the advertising
Yeah.
personalization space. It used to be called DCO, or Dynamic Creative Optimization. They got bought out, the big companies got bought out by the Yahoos of the world and everything else. You still can get it through, your Seismic, your Rich Media, there are ways to do it, but you're gonna pay a higher CPM for getting that.
Right.
So just, because I know I was asked to make sure that I repeat anything for the people viewing at home. So it sounds like, so you were saying that some of the advertising, correct me if I'm wrong, there used to be companies that were very good at targeting. They got
Right.
bought up by the big platforms like the Yahoos and others, so therefore there's not as many doing it.
So I think the questions
Yes.
just have to be asked to your Seismics or your advertising people, do you have that ability to do that? Because it is out there, but now it's more hidden than the obvious company that you can go to get that done.
So we'll test it. So another question to ask whoever your technology providers or ad serving companies are is whether they can do this. I want to make sure we get at least one or two audience questions in. I know the gentleman back there had a question, and I'll repeat it for anybody viewing at home.
Well, okay, so huge proponent of actually Roku above all else. I'm a deep fan of Roku applications. I love obscure stuff that I find on Roku. But the experience, it seems to me, I agree with you about spending the money on marketing, but I mean, spending the money on actually being able to navigate the app once you're in it can be deeply frustrating,
Yep.
for a user.
Roku's the worst.
That's a
So-
Roku thing, though.
So Roku, we're saying we have a big fan here, but
Yeah.
the experience
You're a
leaves
fan
something to be
despite it,
desired.
which
It's a
might be why they're
limitation
not
of technology.
incentivized to do anything about it.
Yeah, it's a limitation of technology. You know, Roku is working very hard, but if you're accustomed to Apple TV and Amazon Fire, who have amazing user experiences, Roku, while it's an anomaly that their platform. I think they're doing up a lot of upgrades right now. Direct Publisher is obviously very limited in its functionality. Moving into Scene Graph, you're going to start to see a lot more unique user experiences. But you have to understand, Scene Graph is BrightScript was the original language of Roku. Okay, BrightScript is deprecated, so they are not supporting BrightScript anymore. So a lot of people have moved into Direct Publisher because it's quick and easy. But the next thing we're moving into is Scene Graph, and I think that's where you're going to start to see developers start to make a real pivot in terms of the actual user experience that they're able to deliver inside of Roku. So I think that it's early on. It's still early. The deprecation of BrightScript, they're not going to support it. They're not supporting it. And as of 2018 January, that's when you're going to start to see more and more apps becoming more or come more intuitive with user experience when it comes to like being able to have a new framework to build inside of, which is Scene Graph.
Just to jump in on Roku, so I'm a designer by trade, whatever. I used to work at Apple. User experience is like my thing. I teach user experience at Columbia, love user experience. But user experience is very often misinterpreted to mean beautiful, right? And one of the things I teach in my class is that the number one tenet of a good user experience is being useful.
Yeah.
It's not being beautiful. It's not being simple. I'd much rather have something super complex and super useful than something like beautiful and simple that is useless.
Yeah.
Right.
Frustrating.
And so there's to me, Roku, as much as I hate to look at it with my human eyes, is a great example of that. It's incredibly useful to so many people. They are geniuses as far as marketing and partnerships, and they got in really early.
Yep.
And despite their hideousness, they continue to be useful to so many people. It's great to hear that maybe they're going to, come and join us in the future.
Yeah, well, we just finished
but-
developing in Scene Graph for start transitioning
Right.
some of our clients. So we're starting to see a better experience.
But even there, I wouldn't expect too much
No,
because
yeah.
they're siloed. Like
Gotcha.
Amazon Fire TV, for instance, and is built on Android. tvOS obviously is a cousin of iOS and macOS.
Yeah.
Like there's tons of there's whole communities around that, and Roku is just like living its own little
Own
world.
little- yeah.
But despite that, it continues to be the number one OTT in the U.S.
Just to be clear, I'm not trying to be too mean to Roku.
So the question is, I hate Roku. But
The problem isn't that the icons aren't beveled. The problem is that somebody will have their 150 pieces of content on one single carousel
That's-
with no manner of
Right.
indication.
That's also a point of, okay, so
Channel.
understanding, you're now talking about like a direct publisher. So direct publisher, depending on how the feed's being delivered, if it's just an MRSS feed that a company can help you deliver, then you're not going to have the user experience that you could have if you're delivering a JSON file into the direct publisher feed. So it's now working with OVP providers who understand and are, we're a preferred partner with Roku for direct publisher feeds because we understand in order for your ads to play correctly, in order for your channel segmentation to be done correctly, you need to be able to deliver a JSON file. Most companies only deliver MRSs. So there's a big difference. And that's part of what your frustration that you're seeing is that these platforms were built delivering an MRSS feed as opposed to a simple thing of delivering a JSON feed.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question, if there is one. There we go, right there.
Yes, I have a short film that has been going to festivals with Ed Asner and Gene Smart, and now I'm at the point of wanting to get on a bunch of platforms. So I just want to be clear what you guys have said. Is it best to just go on whatever you can get on? My question then becomes, how do you drive people to your particular piece of content? And is it worth any kind of investment if you can't make it back on the revenue that you'd make in such tiny amounts?
So the question is, for a short film, what do I do?
Now, do you just have one piece of content? Or,
At the moment, yes.
Yeah.
So-
I'd like to develop it as a series, but that's.
yeah. So, I'm going to go back to what I said in partners.
Partners.
You know, what I would do is I would work on if you want to develop a channel, work on developing, like what she said, you have to have a good amount of content that you have. If not, find a channel
Yeah,
that,
I'm not interested in doing a channel yet. I just want to get my content.
right.
Own channel.
So find a channel that identifies with
Your
with,
demographic.
with your demographic and with who you are. You want to have somebody you like to do business with, and then research that person, make sure they're not a scumbag, because there's plenty of scumbags in this industry.
Yeah, there's a couple of great places like Vidya.
Maybe one
Vidya
or two.
is, they were originally built for artists, but what they do is they do syndication into like all the different places. Kino Nation is another great place. They take filmmaker content and deliver it, because they're like an aggregator, they can deliver it to a bunch of places. Juice Media, Juice.
Gray Juice Labs.
Yeah,
Ubiquity.
yeah, they are all
Juice
places
Media's
that
great.
could potentially work with you if they feel like your content is viable, it fits a specific demographic. They have a lot of syndication opportunities just for individual pieces of content.
Yeah,
So,
and I have an aggregator who's offering me a list of things to get it on, but I'm here to find out what that means in terms of, are there better ones to go on? Is
You-
it going across, doing sketches?
get it as many places as you can. You just want to make sure you get reporting. So that, because it's not about owning the audience right now, right? That's not what this is about. This is just about you monetizing and getting getting seen. So
Visibility.
visibility is just syndicated everywhere you
They'll take
possibly
your content,
can.
they'll say you never,
Yeah.
it was never watched, and they're collecting money off your content because they're back to the definition of a scumbag.
Yeah, you just want to make sure that you are working with partners who are going to deliver metrics and that can prove to you that they're going to deliver metrics. Like they can say, well, what do your metrics look like? I'd like to see an example of how, like, what my reporting's going to look like. If they can deliver that to you, then you're in at least somewhat of a fighting chance of knowing that you're going to get metrics delivered. And like, is that in the contract? Do they have like a specific metric date that they deliver metrics on? Like, those are the things you want to know when you're connecting.
Don't rely on the aggregator to take care of that, because I think he pays me.
But you want the aggregator to deliver metrics to you,
you.
reporting.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and talk to other people who
Are with them.
Are with them.
Yeah.
Talk to them. Just like the fence. You want to make sure
Yeah.
you get multiple bids and then check them out with their customers.
Great. And I think on that, we're out of time, so I want to thank everyone for coming, and now we can enjoy your drinks.
Thank you.